The content you're about to hear may be graphic in nature. Listener discretion is advised.
Oh, how I wonder what it's like to relax. See the sky down under. Hope my plans collapse. Oh, how I'm under the surface of my tears, falling down asunder the meaning of my years.
This is True Crime XS.
You've been away for a few minutes, 3.5 years since we last came on the show and talked about this. The audience has picked up on the case again because we reran the 2 older episodes on your aunt, Catherine Mowrey, who goes by Catrina, but you're her namesake, Catrina.
Correct.
And you've been, I will say diligently on your part, trying to get progress on this case that we just told the audience about. And you sent me a timeline. Does it shock you that it's been 3.5 years since we've sat down to record something about this case?
Yes, I was pretty flabbergasted about it when I went back to review it before today. Yes.
And originally you had reached out to me with a couple of things we have been talking about, and I was going to just change the name of the episode and republish it, but because of the way our hosts have worked over the years, apparently it's impossible now because it's from 2022. So we decided to rerun those episodes as the first part of the season. And you made the comment, a lot has happened since the last time we sat down to record about this. Do you want to start there, or you want to start with the timeline?
Well, I'll probably honestly go with the timeline in mind anyway since then.
Let's go to the beginning of your timeline just so that people get an understanding of how much you've captured here. Is that all right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I just had to keep a timeline of it for my own sanity, just to kind of both document everything for the most part, at least the main stuff, and then kind of keep track of it and keep track of when. And that way I have those references I can look back on.
It's interesting how you chose to do it, so you sort of summarized at the beginning that this is about Catherine Catrina Diane Mowrey. So her nickname is Catrina. That's going to come up how she gets that in just a second. And you're documenting her life from February 5th, 1961 up until June 23rd, 1985 for part of the timeline. And then the other part of the timeline is you, not just you though, because your mom is significantly involved in the events after 1985, which obviously we've talked about those.
Yeah. And I just only put in really before the stuff that I felt might be possibly could be relevant to this now, and what, the factors that, I took into account to influence how it ended up possibly.
Which I think is an interesting approach, and it gives you something that, one, is shareable if you have to, and two, it makes a fantastic summary, although I will say it's got 15 pages to it.
Sorry.
No, it's not small is my point.
Yeah, it's not. No, it's not.
The first item of note that's highlighted is obviously February 5th, 1961, when Catrina is born. She's the first of 3 girls. She is born to James and Catherine Mowrey. You point out that in 1962, Joan Marie Mowrey is born, who is your aunt. And Deborah Karen Mowrey is born in 1963, who is your mom.
Right. They are stair-step, back to back to back.
It was the happiest 3 years of James and Catherine's
Right.
marriage.
Well, there was two more too, but they were boys.
I stopped at the girls because I figured that would be the happiest three.
Right. Well, they're stair step too. They're all stair stepped back to 1959, I think. 59,
Okay.
60, 61, 2, 3, and 2 and 3. Yeah. It's crazy.
So May of 1966 is your next highlighted moment. And that's that the three girls, so Deborah, Joan, and Catrina, they're kidnapped from their grandparents' yard by their father, James Edward Mowrey.
Yep.
And he's going to drive them all the way to Dallas, Texas. And Catherine Mowrey, their mother, is going to be looking for her daughters for almost 2 years.
Yep. I mean, I would probably be freaking out if that were the case for me.
Yeah. Hunting for your children when your spouse has taken them, it's actually way more common than people think, but it never gets less terrifying.
I'm sure, especially in the 60s, you don't have technology like you do now. It's not as easy to track people and scan tag numbers and, track cell phone location data and all that stuff. So,
yeah, even just getting a phone number back then would have been a nightmare.
Exactly. But that for me, I guess, pointed out their link to Dallas for the first time. And how they kind of got their footing there in the first place to begin with.
While this is going on, are the boys with mom?
And the boys are in school. So the girls are only like less than 5 years old. And the two boys are at school.
I just can't imagine thinking it would be a good idea to take my three daughters and run away with them.
Right. My grandmother hated his guts. She hated him.
The next thing you highlight is kind of, I guess this is the person that you know as grandpa, sort of.
My grandfather. Yeah.
So that's April 12th, 1974, when Catherine, so this is Catrina, your aunt's mom.
Mm-hmm.
She marries a man named Robert Mowrey.
E-R-Y. Yes.
Okay. Which is very confusing, by the way.
Oh, I cannot believe it. You have no idea how much that's caused and be an issue.
And they get married on Robert or Bob's birthday.
Yep.
Interesting choice of anniversaries, but I get where he's coming from there, because you're never going to forget your anniversary.
Yep. She always said she was going to divorce him and marry him on a different day. Yep. I lived with them for quite a while, actually, in my childhood.
So I imagine that influences a lot of what you're doing now. A lot. I lived with them for like 5 years while my mother was incarcerated in the penitentiary at the women's prison here. So they are who I lived with since my father was a truck driver and was over the road all the time. When that was going on, what age were you? I was in elementary school, probably fourth or second, third grade-ish, maybe. Okay. I can't remember exactly. Well, it was the 90s, like late 90s, like very late 90s into the early 2000s. So, I was born in 91. And so I think she went in 98, maybe. That was pretty young. So like first, second grade. Okay. So you have a lot of bonding time with your grandparents during all of that. And I have a lot of time with them alone, where like when my mom was growing up, it was crazy sibling, because my grandfather, he also had children from his prior marriage. So it was like the Brady Bunch in there, and they all had different last name spellings, even though they all had the same last name. the two names, like I remember early on when we first started talking about this case and you and I first started communicating, I was like, wow, I don't know. What are the odds, right? No. but then I realized later, it's both of these names are spelled differently. For the audience who can't see, like the documents we're looking at right this second, you're talking about the difference between Mowrey and Mowery. Yeah. And it creates an incredibly confusing Brady Bunch family squares there when the names are slightly different.
Yes, it does. And I know, like, when I looked at my biological grandfather's, like, death certificate stuff, my grandma had actually crossed out the spelling of it because they had spelled it the way that his was spelled, and she fixed it on there. I was like, oh, Grandma. That's funny.
So you move forward in time with your timeline to 1984. It's specifically, you pick up in January of 1984, and that is on the 5th. Catherine was in a car accident in Kansas City, Missouri. And this was in the early morning hours near where she worked, but it was off of I-435, right?
It's right. Yeah, it's right off the main highway that is kind of connecting with Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas. Because she lived in Lawrence, Kansas, in 1984 for a little while. She was back and forth a lot. So she was working at the country club in Kansas City, and was on her way home from work after we're waitressing all day or whatever.
So she ends up with some pretty serious injuries. She ends up with a neck injury and broken bones in her back, as well as cuts and bruises.
Yeah, she was thrown from the vehicle and landed on the train tracks.
This is the 1980 Chevrolet that she's driving when this happens?
Yep, and I don't know whose car that was, but I think it was hers, and that's why she had started borrowing, as you'll see later on in the timeline, someone else's car. So
you make a note here that on August 13th, 1984, one of the suspects, or one of the people that are on our short list because of their affiliation with Catrina, he's arrested for a robbery while working for a cab company.
Mm-hmm. And since he worked for the cab company, and not just that, but he had a lot of different forms or methods of transportation. So he was the one that loaned her the car that she was found in.
So that's going to fast forward a year for us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you do point out that Christmas Day, Catrina is in Lawrence, Kansas, and her family is there because you've physically seen photographs from that day.
Yep.
So then we move into 1985. The other suspect, we'll call him Suspect 2. He has an interesting nickname, but I don't even think we should give that away.
Well, yeah, it's crazy. I don't know who'd be afraid of that kind of a street nickname, but it is what it is.
In April of 1985, he is pulled over and arrested for being in possession of marijuana. And it looks to me like you actually pulled a Dallas police report for that. Is that correct?
I did. I requested records eventually. Actually, that one was more recent that I got back finally. It took, some records are so fast and quick and easy to get, and then other ones take months and months and months.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the weight of the information in the record sometimes. Right.
Well, yeah, and I was just kind of trying to track suspects a little bit, or persons of interest, kind of leading up to, the death as well. Okay. And kind of point on a map, like, they were in this area and doing and, socializing around this part of town, and, just kind of to visualize it.
Well, so in this, you pulled a quote, and that quote was that this particular suspect had stated he was at the Meadowbrook Motel the night before, and he had done some coke and smoked some weed.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you pull that?
It just kind of shows, like the state of mind he was in, like right before, or what he was involved in, and like his activities that could correlate with some of the, I guess, assumptions on this case a little bit. Yeah.
Specifically, like that there was potentially drug use surrounding.
Yes, exactly. And that, it could be essentially a possible motive going forward.
You also noted his car, which was fantastic. You got it down to the tag number. Like, it's not just the car. You noted the exact model.
It was on the report, so to me that part's important because of her being found in a car, and I got to figure out whose car is which and all that stuff. So
Right. And then you also were able to narrow down an address for him, or at least a listed address for that time period.
Mm-hmm. For that police report where he was supposedly living, yeah.
So you then, a month later, you're able to hunt down through a background check, and then I think this actually comes by you, like looking for information about your aunt specifically with her name. She's involved as the prosecution's witness in an incident, May 30th of 1985, with a man who would best be described as kind of suspect number 3.
Mm-hmm. That's a suspect I never knew about.
Okay.
Until after my mom had passed away and everything. Like the DA's office actually gave me the 4 names of those 4 official suspects that they have.
Okay. And so this guy, the way that you note this is that this man is arrested for breaking down Catrina's apartment door and having a firearm on him. Mm-hmm. Law enforcement were nearby, but they weren't there for this. They were there for an unrelated call, but they saw this happening. They witnessed the incident.
Exactly.
And they arrest him, and it's going to be about a year. In March of 1986, he's going to plead guilty to, I think it's a misdemeanor unlawful carrying of a weapon.
Right, but he had other warrants already from other jurisdictions as well for traffic or something, I believe it was as well.
And he's kind of one of the more interesting suspects because of the timing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Your next highlighted spot in here is June 18th, 1985. And the way that you summarize this is that Catrina was planning to drive home to Kansas to visit with her little sister, your mom, mm-hmm. and with other family members. But prior to this trip, your mom and your aunt, they get into an argument over the phone, and your mom ends up hanging up on her sister.
Yeah, that was the last time she ever spoke to her.
Right, which
sucks.
That's a terrible memory to have, and obviously,
it ate her alive till she died.
Yeah,
from the inside out. Yep.
So then, June 23rd, we have this report that Jennifer Day is supposedly the last person to see Catherine Mowrey alive, and it's at 6:20 a.m. on the 23rd. And the idea is that they have a shared apartment. We've narrowed that down, but the way that you phrase it is, even though we have these 3 apartments that are possibly theirs, Dallas has since basically retracted the roommate's name. And according to you, after we talked the last time on July 1st, 2023, they don't really know where this came from.
Right. I don't. Every time that they've ever went over anything with me, they seem to either find something that they haven't mentioned before or recant something.
Right.
But this is why I document it as I'm, on a call or, an email. That's exactly why. And I date them. That's why.
I mean, it clearly, and that would make me want to call more, because maybe I'll get a partner or a supervisor and they'll give me even more information because I'm getting, these bits and pieces.
Well, the 2 addresses were interesting because they didn't know what her address was at the time of her death, even though a month earlier, not even 3 weeks earlier, they were just called to her residence because someone kicked her door in, but they have no idea what her address is at the time of her death, which I found very intriguing, a little bit suspicious.
Yeah, it's literally 3 weeks earlier.
Yeah, so I'm like, well, it's right here on this report. So what? I don't. 1 + 1 is 2. I don't know.
Then we get to the probably the most horrifying date in here. I'd say there's actually a more horrifying date for you personally, but June 25th, 1985. The report here that you uncovered, and then you have notes in here, and I'll go over them kind of separately. Basically, the Dallas police find her body either at or near this intersection.
Yeah, it's in an alley between like two buildings.
The trunk of the car is locked, but Catrina is in the trunk.
But it's locked from the outside.
Right, with a key.
Mm-hmm.
And this vehicle appears to have been reported as an abandoned vehicle. You noted that you have the vehicle they say it is with a tag number.
Yep.
And you also put a quick note in here that suspect number one we talked about is the owner of this vehicle and alleged to be either a boyfriend or just romantic interest of some kind. And then you note that you've determined through public records that he was married at the time.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. And I didn't find that out until way later on either. I was just going through like marriage records and stuff in, Dallas County and doing some tree building and family trees and stuff, and found, I stumbled upon their marriage license. And so that means that not only was he the owner of the vehicle, but so was the wife at that time.
Was that one of those things that like shocked you, but not really shocked you?
I wasn't really shocked by the fact that it was a marriage or anything. I was just shocked that there was someone, period, who could have possibly, had motive at that point. It kind of highlighted another possibility of, possibility.
Right. It highlights like either one of them could be involved at that point, or both.
Yep.
You said something interesting in this. This is a longer summary for people wondering why I'm belaboring this, because it is it's terrible, but at the same time we have to go through it. The vehicle was noted to have been parked in this alley since Saturday night, even though technically at one point we have a witness seeing her on Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm. Their timelines are wrong. Something's wrong. Yep.
So that would move us back to June 22nd as being when this vehicle's left here.
Allegedly. But they're saying, the car was parked there that Saturday night at least, that they remember, yet someone has a written statement that is now nowhere to be found, that they had seen her alive and well, that Sunday morning.
And it's noted that they talked to a nearby apartment complex manager, which is where they think they get the information from the vehicle having been there since Saturday night.
Yeah, she's the one that called into the police and reported it being there since Saturday night. And it was confirmed by like 4 or 5 different people that were associated with the complex, like the maintenance man, or maybe 2 even, and, residents and whatnot.
So a basic canvas puts this vehicle there for a couple of days, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they note that the time that they find Catrina in the trunk is 4:52, so it's in the afternoon.
But they were there earlier, I think. They just had to sit out there and wait for a tow truck to bring like a crowbar that they could use to try to pry the trunk open.
And that's because of being locked from the outside with a key.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like it locks when you shut it, but then like, the older vehicles, you also lock with like a separate key as well.
What is your understanding as to Catrina's size?
Oh, she's tiny. She's always been tiny, very petite, like 100 pounds, 120 pounds.
That's what I was picturing too. I just was, when you start thinking of people in the trunk of a car, like the visual of that, I think, escapes a lot of people because cars were so much larger in the 70s.
Yeah, that car was big. Even though it was a 2-door, especially, it was still like a hoopty is what we'd call it here. But
right, yeah, it's a land yacht basically.
Mm-hmm.
In the trunk of the car at 4:52, they find Catrina's nude body. She is wrapped in a white bed sheet, and there is something described as a cloth belt wrapped around her neck. And you made a note here, under the sheet could have possibly been a pillowcase, ? Is that an investigative note from you, or is
That's me. That's
okay.
me. And it's just based on the fact that she's wrapped in a sheet, and they call it a cloth belt, but they don't call it that until the end of the autopsy. But at the beginning of the autopsy notes, it's just a belt. So it's almost like it kind of lessens the severity of it as you go along in the autopsy report, and then, like I think it's probably either a pillowcase because of the sheet part in particular. And then also, I know my mom and my aunts always would wear their robes after they got out of the shower and stuff, the cloth belts on like a robe, like a bathrobe or something.
Yeah.
That was my other thought.
And then you note that there was a second belt wrapped around her neck that's outside the sheet.
Yeah, I never knew there was any belt ever. No one did ever know that part.
It came from your investigation.
Right.
You note here that given the level of decomposition, they were unable to see any visible superficial marks or wounds on her body. You write here that the toxicology report comes back all clear for all drugs.
Yes. At the time of her death, they say there was no drugs in her system, and the alcohol would have been decompositional fluid.
You then point out that you hunted into this in June of 2023, and Dallas police ended up stating that there was, quote, some type of ligature or tie on top of the sheet around the neck and also directly on the skin as well. And that's where you get this information from, right?
Well, yes. I mean, when I saw the whole jaw drop moment for me in all of this is probably the day I received the copy of the autopsy and toxicology in my mailbox. That for me was probably like pick my jaw up off the floor moment of all of them. Because at that point, my mom was already gone. And everything. Like, no one ever knew anything like that or knew that there weren't drugs in her system. They had just been led to believe that all along. And so that for me was just so jaw-dropping on so many different levels about so many different things.
I don't know how we ever get to the point where this isn't a homicide, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I know we've addressed that before, but like, I just want to restate it because people don't make their way into bed sheets and tie themselves up and put themselves on the trunk of a car that's locked with a key. All of those details
from the
important.
outside.
Right. Yeah. Because it's the involvement of another person at that point.
Well, I mean, it's still illegal to, hide a body or to abandon a body. Yeah.
Right. This is, depending on the jurisdiction you're in, this is either a desecration or concealment of a corpse or potentially concealing a death, which is sometimes considered more serious because it can impede investigations into what caused that death. Mm-hmm. So Wednesday, June 26, 1985, her autopsy is performed. The following day, a supplemental investigative report, which has a murder classification, is filed. Mm-hmm. And so we have a detective in charge of this case. He's known as P.E., Detective P.E. Jones.
Yep. He's pretty well known, I think, in the Dallas area. He was on a bunch of different episodes of like the first 48 and everything.
And so he's the one who talks with your mom over the years.
Yep. Until he retires, of course, in 2004 or something, I think, or 2002 maybe.
So July 6th of 1985, there's a burial and funeral held in Lawrence, Kansas.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Her obituary comes out the following Monday, and it has her named as Catrina Mowrey, Mowrey, and it states that the circumstances surrounding her death are still under investigation by the Dallas, Texas Police Department.
Yep, that's exactly what it says in the newspaper. So they were under that, and they were under that impression. Yes, I mean it's clear not only just because they told me so, but in stuff like this too. It just kind of backs up everything I've always been told.
So you skip ahead in your timeline. The first place you skip to is another, potentially awful day for the family, and it's also in Dallas, Texas, and that's April of 1993, when Joanne Mowrey, who is your mom's older sister.
Yeah, my mom's the youngest, so they were all older than her.
It's the middle sister.
Catrina's the oldest sister.
Right, but Joanne is the middle sister.
Correct. Yep.
So she's murdered at the Linfield Motel in Dallas, Texas.
Yep.
And that case has a suspect.
Mm-hmm.
That case is closed, but it's like there's so much time in between now and then. Like he got out on parole like 12 years ago, right?
Yeah, he did like 25 years or something and then was paroled without our knowledge, by the way. No one ever communicated that like they were supposed to do. So,
Okay.
That had another big, huge, profound effect on my mom when she found out.
Speaking of effects on mom, she loses her mother, your grandmother, in October of 2007.
Yep.
And so your timeline then jumps ahead like a lot. It comes up in September or so of 2020. You start taking over. I assume like up to this point.
COVID.
I was gonna say a couple of things about that. One was mom's getting older. Two is COVID and you have nothing else to do at the moment, right?
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly what it was.
So you dive head first into this.
Mm-hmm.
September 9th, you reach out to the Dallas Police Department. You had, I guess, spoken to your mom, and she basically indicated to you she wasn't getting any information from them.
Well, yeah, she never really would push, though. She was so sensitive and emotional around the topic itself in general that, like, she didn't really know how to push for the answers or ask the right questions, and she'd take anything they said and just be like, oh, okay, yeah, thank you. Like, I don't want any more, like, that's all, thank you, that's good. I just wanted to make sure there was no update or, that kind of thing. And so I felt like they kind of took advantage of her that way and, used that to their advantage so that she would stop asking a lot.
That just didn't sit well with you, huh?
No, that pissed me off because I know my mom's very sensitive and she's fragile emotionally and mentally, especially at that point. And like, I was just annoyed, like, cause my mom and I were opposites. So I was more of like, she's like all bark and no bite. And I'm like all bite and not that much bark.
You just do it.
Yeah. She always called me a scrappy. Like she always said I was a scrapper.
I don't think I would take that as anything but the best of compliments.
I hope so.
By September 11th, 2020, you didn't get a response from Dallas Police Department. And in your summary, you say you started to get red flags. So what were the red flags?
They tried to give me the runaround when I called and asked about it. It took them like a month just to respond and acknowledge my inquiry in the first place. Like it was just, I just got the vibe. I don't even know. I can't tell you what exactly in particular it was. It was all as a whole, I think. And I just kind of I don't know. I'm really good at reading like into people's like vibe and.
This just wasn't doing it for you then.
Mm-mm. And they weren't really like sure of anything. They weren't like confident in anything they said. They weren't direct in any information. They sent me in like circles and they just kept like kind of trying to lessen the severity of the situation. Just that kind of stuff, just kind of as a whole, just kind of didn't sit right with me.
And so I guess their intent was probably to get you to chill out or to leave them alone. And instead, you ordered Catrina Mowrey's death certificate. You put in a Public Information Act request, which is like the official Texas public records request for Dallas in this instance.
Yeah, I needed something in black and white because they weren't giving me much of anything. My mom, I didn't bring it up unless she did, just to avoid, the tears. And like, I just needed something in black and white that was not hopefully biased and, just to kind of put the facts out there. And I wanted to know what her cause of death was in the manner because that was important to me. that way I could see whether or not it was, correct, and if it actually warranted an actual investigation or not based on that determination.
At this point, I hate to say it this way, but you're going through the bureaucracy. Like, there's a lot of steps that you take. The records department reaches out, wants to know what you want, and they want information about you.
And who I am and how I'm related, or, yeah.
Right. So then you message them, and they point out that, like, oh, this case is really, really old. It's hard for us to deal with something that's 35 years old. We have to get it from the archives. It's going to be a while. And in October, you get a message from the homicide unit lieutenant at Dallas Police Department. And he states, I don't have access to non-murder files that old, meaning 35 years old. I can only determine it was not a murder in Dallas in 1985.
Yeah, and then he said that they didn't have anyone with that last name as a murder on any date in the city of Dallas, which I thought was interesting since I've had two aunts, two with the same last name and spelling, murdered in Dallas.
That is interesting, and that is such a unique set of circumstances to be able to reference.
I'm like, you don't have one file about any Mowrey being murdered in Dallas. That's crazy, because I've had two different aunts that have been murdered there. And then he tried to say something like, well, it could have been, not in the city limits, or maybe it was Dallas County. And I'm like, no, it was not.
So at this point, did you dig in? Is that the like mentally? Are you just like, I'm going to do this?
Well, he felt very he was very condescending and kind of patronizing, I felt like. And I know I'm, fairly smart individual, and I do not appreciate the insult to my intelligence. Sure, I'm not an investigator or detective, but I'm not an idiot.
As someone who deals with a lot of police officers, I have to tell you, you've done more work than most of them ever do. Mm-hmm. And that's the politest way that I can put it. There's a series of events at the end of 2020. One of the first things that happens is you end up getting the death certificate. It comes in the mail in early October, right?
Yep. And then my mom said, as soon as you get it, because she knew I ordered it, and she would check with me every day. Did you get it? Did you get it? Because she's in Arizona and I'm in Kansas. And I'm like, no. And then I finally got it. And I knew as soon as I got it, I was like, damn it. This is not going to go well.
And it doesn't. Mm-mm. A month later, your mom commits suicide.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That is a very difficult situation for anyone to be in, let alone someone who is doing what you're doing and the efforts that you're putting forth to basically trying to assist your mom, but also your aunts, and to satisfy your own skepticism and curiosity. And then that had to be emotionally an earthquake.
Yes, and it was at that point, it was just like, take one family member, take two family members, take the last family member. As far as I'm concerned, I think Dallas has the blood on their hands of all three of them. But and I didn't really think that all the way, at least until I received my mom's psychiatric records from the records request that I did on her doctors that were 25 years long and 2,000 pages long, where she details in, appointments, specifically her words, the effects that these communications and everything end up having on her, and how she feels about them, and how she shows up to these appointments in tears and crying and doesn't want to live anymore and wishes she doesn't wake up the next day, and, brushing her hair and looking in the mirror, and her sisters are looking back at her, not being able to watch TV shows, not being able to watch movies, because of the memories and stuff that it brings up or stirs up inside of her.
Yeah, what most people think of as reflective nostalgia in their life. I mean, if you lose one sister to violence, it becomes complicated. If you lose two to violence, it becomes a nightmare.
And I'm born right in the middle of each murder. So,
well, you become the bright spot in things for her.
Exactly. And that was the way, for her to honor, her sister and all that. And then, so she's got this new outlook on life and isn't as depressed. And she's found love and marriage with my dad and all this stuff. And then, of course, 93 comes around and I'm like 2. And yeah, that part she couldn't quite bounce back from afterwards.
Yeah, that would be very difficult.
I know that she went to the trial and the DA's office flew her out there to Dallas and everything. And they put her on the stand and showed her the pictures and she immediately started puking. Yeah.
Oh, man. Most people at this point would hire a private investigator or they would just start pestering the police. I have to say, you took so many different avenues here. And I mean this in only positive ways. I've never seen somebody bulldog a situation like this. And I hope that the next stuff that I say will give people who are in this situation that you're in. First of all, I hope no one's in that situation, but we know that people out there are trying to get information about family members' violent passings. And the way that you did it is absolutely fascinating. You start in February 2021.
Well, the only reason that happened, though, is because I obviously lost my mom, so I had to grieve. I was grieving for a while. I also had COVID when she passed. I was very, cloudy memory-wise. I was just very out of it. It was pretty bad at that point, and a lot of people were dying from it. It was pretty bad. We were ordered to stay home, by our governor and everything. It was just, it was kind of brutal at that point, of course, sick-wise, but also emotionally, obviously. But then when I received that report in February, the year after she died, which would have been November, that's what reignited it again, I guess you could say, which shouldn't have taken that long to begin with, but it did. It's fine. Whatever. It was COVID. I give him the benefit of the doubt, I guess.
But you start to see a lot of things are redacted.
Everything was redacted, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when you see that, I totally understand how redactions occur and how different jurisdictions are, but
the police report alone was 2 pages at the most, maximum, and they redacted all it is a black block.
But doesn't that just make you want to know more?
No, I pretty much know what it says, and so that's why I don't really understand why they redacted it.
Okay. You start reaching out to even more people as 2021 goes along. You reach out to...
I had to get creative. It had to come to me randomly.
What... Do you remember, what made you think of Othram Labs?
Well, they weren't popular at that point. They weren't big. They weren't a well-known name. They didn't have the credibility that they do now, or anything like that at that point. I was taking classes on criminology and doing what did I do? It was a certification on testing hair strands with no roots and stuff. And that's when Othram came up in my mind and was I don't remember how exactly, maybe in the class reading or something. I don't know. But so then I reached out and started talking with David Middleman, I think is his name. And we started texting back and forth. And then, we had a meeting over Zoom or something, I think it was. That was a while back, yeah. But then they got huge and then, they kind of got lost in the frenzy. But, yeah.
That's all right. I mean, you were still plowing ahead and you haven't even gotten started at what I find the most fascinating parts of this.
Well, they agreed to do the testing, but Dallas wouldn't give them the evidence.
Okay. Shortly after you start talking to Othram, you do set up a petition to try and get some attention to the case and to try and get some kind of response out of the Dallas Police Department.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that go?
It doesn't.
When did you realize, is that something that you give it a minute? Or you start right away,
Not right
I mean,
away. I mean, I'd try and be fair at least. I know they have a job to do. I know they have other stuff to take care of or whatever. I do really give them the benefit of the doubt in a lot of situations here. But eventually it's just kind of like, come on. Like, what are you doing?
this is where you ramp up what you're doing, but you also start to get, at the same time you're getting feedback and information, you're getting pushback.
Yeah, well, when one door closes, you have to open another one somewhere, or a window or something. And I had to do a lot of those. I had to get creative. I had to kind of like go down paths that weren't traditional, like, type of things, and friend people and get into the crowd of, true crime in general. And that's just a whole group in itself alone.
It is a strange community, yes.
Yes. And so I made connections, I made friends, I made, I helped people with their cold cases that were both solved now and unsolved still. I really made some really good acquaintances and friends still, even we're all still friends, a lot of us.
So 2022, you decide that maybe the door, because like I have a feeling you see life as an endless hallway. There's always a door, right?
Kind of, sometimes, yeah. It never came to me right away. It always came to me at the most random moments. I would be working or something, and then all of a sudden I would think, hey, maybe I should try this. I wonder if this person could help me. Like it always came to me at the most random time.
But that is the best attitude to take in a situation like yours. I think it would be very easy to get frustrated or angry, even depressed. But the ability to like you've sent me emails even recently. You're like, hey, I'm looking at this old murder case from the year before or the year after. What do you think of this? And I am always sort of taken back by how positive you are and how tenacious you are, I think is the right word. Because like you're still researching this. Like even as we're talking today, when's the last time you had a thought and went and like looked up something to see if it might lead to something?
About 5 minutes ago.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So you reach out to see what the process is like to file a complaint on an officer. Specifically, you're looking at the fact that like you don't have a good contact at Dallas police that's like at least giving you information.
Yeah. At all. Like I would rather them answer me or respond and say, we don't have an update at this time than to just not say anything at all.
Okay. You file a formal complaint with the office of the Attorney General's office of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of experience with these.
That was on my birthday too.
I was going to say, and by the way, we're doing all of this on your birthday this year. And I noticed that was also your birthday when you filed this formal complaint.
Yeah.
And a couple of weeks later, you do get a response from the office of the Texas Attorney General.
Yeah, and they also had CC'd me on a couple of emails about it that I didn't realize what was going on there for a second until I kind of looked into it more and realized that they were just copying me on the communications that they were having back and forth with the records, people, and not releasing, because I appealed the original police report that they sent me that was redacted completely. I appealed that release and wanted them to release it unredacted or give me something or more to it. Like, I know it's not just that one page in your file. Like, I know there's more. And that's when they did release the second part of the report with the murder classification on it.
Well, that had to be at least a little bit of confirmation for you to know that there is a piece of paper saying somebody thought this is murder.
An official report, yes. It was a supplemental investigation report by the detectives the day after. Yeah.
By February 2022, you get another idea to reach out directly to the assistant district attorney who handles the special victims unit for Dallas County. And that's the homicides, the sexual assaults. And they respond to you.
On Twitter.
Which is what made you do that?
Again, it was just an idea. I wasn't sure if it would work or anything. I wasn't sure if anyone would respond. I had stirred the shit pot, so to speak, enough to where at this point it was pretty. I mean, you could Google the name of my aunt and you would see all kinds of stuff. I had really put it out there in the media and, podcasts and articles, and it was kind of getting some good attention and everything. And so at that point, I had a bit of a Twitter following, and it was kind of my more credible, approach or public image and everything. And so that's usually the medium I've gone the whole time to reach out to anybody media-wise, journalists, government figures, or anything like that.
And it starts to get you a little bit of information.
Yes.
You actually, this amazes me, but, you get really detailed with your record keeping, which was already detailed.
Mm-hmm.
So they hook you up with a victim's advocate in the DA's office, which that's a double-edged sword to some degree, but at least it's someone to reach out to. And then by March, you've reached out to the Southwest Institute of Forensic Science to get an official copy of the autopsy and toxicology reports.
Yeah, and at that point, I'd already been in communication with the DA's office, of course. But
Right.
Then when I got that, like a month later, I was messaging and was like, what the heck did I just see? This is not okay. And they were like, oh my God. Yeah, no, it's not. It's not okay.
So you spend March, you file a complaint with the Department of Justice, which is a civil rights complaint, right?
Yes, for the kind of dismissiveness of communication with DPD.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you submit a civilian complaint form.
Right. So all this stuff is kind of coming from different angles for different situations and different communications and different scenarios that is all going on simultaneously at this point.
And then you reach to the lab, you follow up with the Southwestern Institute of Forensic Sciences by email to make sure that they've gotten your written requests and your payment for the report. And
yeah, DPD wouldn't give it to me. And so I went around them and just requested it directly myself.
And so by the time you're doing that and you follow up on it, you actually end up getting it in the mail the same day, right?
Yeah, they were literally snail mail, pandemic era, just payment. I had to send in an actual money order or something too, and it's still I had it back within a week, max. That's how quickly they got that to me. It was insane. I just couldn't believe it.
At this point, you also add Catrina's case into the uncovered cold case database, just so it can get a little more attention, and maybe somebody there can think of a new door for you in your hallway, right?
Right, and it was just kind of somewhere to document it, and just kind of have a home, so to speak, of where people could find the details of the information and everything.
And by April 8th, 2022, you actually have not just stirred a shit pot, you've gotten your way into a courtroom, sort of. The Dallas DA, they end up getting a judge to sign off on a search warrant for the evidence room at Dallas Police Department. So
that was not easy. That was not an easy feat. It was in the works for a long time.
And I think that's where you really get into things other people can accomplish. You get a search warrant, or they, through your efforts, they get a search warrant, not just for Dallas Police Department, but also for Southwestern Forensics. And
they had to do the biological and the physical evidence. Yeah. But they kind of were just I don't think there is any, but just in case we can request it, or, just kind of and that shows a lot right there. Just the fact that they did preserve evidence from the crime scene alone shows that was not an undetermined death, that they had always had suspicions that something wasn't right to begin with.
it sort of takes a turn here because the Department of Justice actually gets back to you, but they're not going to move forward with a Civil Rights Division investigation.
Right. And that's fine. I didn't really expect them to. I just needed that paper trail of, the effort itself and the documented, action that was reported, because it gets more and more and more, as time goes on, it just continues. And so now, I've built up over the years just so much documentation and communication and proof, really, just a paper trail of effort that's just ongoing.
I think the door that opens after that closed is you then file a complaint with the Professional Responsibility and Standards, or what's known as Internal Affairs, with the Dallas Police Department.
Mm-hmm.
And does anything ever come of that?
Nope, not on that one, which is, again, fine. I just needed the case number to show I reported it, and I got it. And so that's, just another check mark in the box where, anytime I talk to them, they're like, well, you can start and do this, you can request this, or since you didn't request it twice, we didn't think you still wanted it, or something stupid like that. So I basically had to go through and jump through their hoops and kind of go through the process and the freaking stupid hoop jumping and do all their shenanigans.
So that gets us to 2022, and around this time is when we released our first episodes.
Mm-hmm.
You, in the background, you sent out a request that summer to get medical records from Lawrence Memorial Hospital related to your aunt, mm-hmm. and they come back and say, well, they don't have anything. And then you do the weirdest thing I've ever seen somebody do, and I cannot applaud you enough for having done this.
I already know what you're going to say.
You decide that you're going to apply for the Prosecutor Academy internship at the Dallas District Attorney's Office. Not only do you decide you're going to do it, you get confirmation that you've formally been accepted and that the background checks are underway and you got to do a couple of things. But you literally take this to the point that you take an internship with the District Attorney's Academy.
It was very, I guess you could say a wild hair up your, kind of thing. I was just like, F it. What's the worst that they could say? No, they're probably going to just say no. Because I'm not even in Dallas, but...
It's COVID anyways. This is kind of the end of COVID, really.
I cannot believe they actually did that. And it was a long time too. It was a while. It went on for a few months, and it was twice a week or once a week. And, every week we met with different departments and, people within the DA's office and the investigative units and how they investigate this and how their court, system goes from this step to this step to that step. And, so it's very interesting to get the inside look of how things are supposed to work realistically, even though they don't. That was a hard one to bite my tongue on a lot of times, but I don't think that they ever had any clue that it was me the whole time.
And that's the part that makes me I don't know how to explain to you. When you texted me that, I was like, she did what? Yeah. Because it was such a bold thing to do. And I am sure, I'm sure you know this, but so much information comes out of those things that it can seem useless to the average person if you're not going into that career field.
I had to educate myself because no one seemed to know what they were doing and no one was able to help me. So I had to figure it out myself.
Yeah, this internship is literally, in your situation, kind of the equivalent of a master's degree in this type of investigation.
Yeah. Up to even animal abuse. It was crazy.
It's wild that you did that. And I cannot tell you how awesome that is. You do this successfully. You graduated in November 2022 from this internship. You also, as you're going, are digging into the other suspects. Yes. And one of them, who is kind of the prime suspect in all of this in some ways, you're figuring out how to get public records back on them.
Yep. And I noticed that the assistant city attorney of Dallas kept I guess they were the ones that were saying, don't release these records to her, don't release these records to her. And I eventually called her, even though the phone number on her signature was not correct. She did not have it correct on the signature of her emails. It was an in-service phone number. Eventually, I got a hold of her and told her it was incorrect. And she's like, yeah, we'll fix that. I don't know if she ever did. But anyway, we were speaking on the phone, and she confirmed to me that this was still an open case.
So so to be clear, on the one hand, we're talking about like the district attorney's office, but at this point, we're actually talking about the attorneys for the city of Dallas.
Yeah, so they're the ones that would, in any instance of like a lawsuit or something, represent the city.
Right.
Yes.
You kind of go on a media binge after this.
Yeah.
You do still stop off and like do a little fighting with the attorney general's office and the city attorney's office, but you reach out to
they did overrule her. They did tell her, we're releasing it anyway. Like, you don't have the authority to say no in this instance because you didn't even respond in the timely manner that's required in, our process. So
when you did that, and is that the report that had the word murder on it? Yeah.
Yep.
So that takes you, like, basically you end up getting that in January 2023.
Yeah, so I was like, Dallas 25, Catrina 1, but we're getting somewhere. Yeah.
I mean, you are. You reach out to Sarah Mitchell at Project Cold Case, and this is February 2023. She calls the Dallas Police Department, and she's trying to verify some of the case information, but the Dallas Police Department basically states, there's nothing here. We have no record of this.
We don't even know. We've never heard that name. Yeah.
But they don't freak out because you have so much documented at this point.
Exactly. I do. And I had the city attorney email me with the confirmation in the email, wrote out, because I told her I wanted, it written down and, stating that the case is still open. And she did.
So they're able to put it in their database either way, because they're big on confirmation.
Right. They said no at first, but then once I was able to pretty much prove otherwise, they just went ahead and took it based on what I gave them.
I'm so glad they did that, because
me too.
Like, that's an important moment for people that are working with projects like that, or with the different forms of media that are out there, where they figure out that, like, the police do sometimes get it wrong. Sometimes they're just not paying attention, and sometimes they just lie.
And really, it's so stupid, because you could just, just be like, oops, sorry, let's move on and get it done. Like, why fight someone on it? All the work is done for you pretty much.
Right. And you're continuing to do that work even now.
Right.
At this point, is this when you go on Crime Door? Like, they record an episode?
Yep. Uh-huh.
And then you're also talking to Seasons of Justice. This is like May 2023.
Right. Yeah, they weren't Season of Justice was kind of new at that point as well. And they're like a nonprofit that was made out of Crime Junkie.
Right.
With their owners and everything and everything. And we start communicating, and things kind of start moving a little bit after that. Yeah.
Right. We'll leave that out of it for the moment, just because I know how slow things are there. I don't want to jinx anything. Mm-hmm. And you don't have resolution there yet, right?
On which part?
On anything going on at Seasons of Justice.
Well, I didn't end up needing them, really. The only thing that they might help with at this point would be like the billboard stuff, maybe.
Gotcha. Early June 2023, you are informed that Catrina's case is getting a detective, like a new detective within their special investigations unit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that feels like a pretty big hurdle to overcome, don't you think?
Yeah, and also, having to go through every little thing. Yeah, it's a little draining to re-explain it every single time to someone new because they don't have any knowledge or firsthand, experience with the case, of course. And so just, the more times it changes hands, the more, it gets diluted basically in the information. But continue.
Well, he calls you and basically informs you that there is some physical evidence, and it has now made its way to the Southwestern Institute of Forensic Science for testing.
Right. Well, kind of. In between there, I didn't actually put it on the timeline because it was so much at once. And I was trying to keep it all together and keep track of it and keep it moving. But at that point, we had gotten word back from me and the DA's office, that we're working together. We got word back that they had found both physical and biological evidence when they did the search warrant, and that it was indeed available, and hopefully it was preserved enough to be tested. I'm really impressed, honestly, and this is where I give Dallas credit. Like, they actually knew in the future that DNA capabilities might be more advanced enough to be able to test this kind of stuff in more detail or depth, and they actually did take it just in case, which I found very surprising.
So we send evidence out, and that's kind of how your summer of 2023 kicks off. And then you go on a pretty serious information quest, which I think we need to pick up with in the next episode.
Okay. Yep, that works.
Special consideration was given to True Crime Excess by LabrottieCreations.com. If you have a moment in your favorite app, please go on and give us a review or a 5-star rating. It helps us get noticed in the crowd. This is True Crime XS.
You fall like the stars. I break things like guitars. Thick skin, no scars. We're in trouble, we took it too far. I don't want to go, but it's 'cause I'll disappoint ya. It's all I've ever dreamed of, something I cannot let go of. I hate the competition, this culture's like a gym, and I lost the motivation to get fit in your expectations.
True Crime Excess is brought to you by John and Meg. It's written, produced, edited, and posted by John and Meg. You can always support True Crime Excess through Patreon.com, or if you have a story you'd like them to cover, you can reach them at TrueCrimeAccess.com. Thank you for joining us.